Hi, I'm Amy Stair, CEO of Star Power, and I am so honored to have with us today Jeffrey Klinner from Birmingham, Alabama. Jeffrey has had a very successful career and has gone through some evolutions I think you're going to find very instructive and quite interesting. So Jeffrey, thank you so much for finally letting me wear you down and saying yes to be here.
It's my pleasure. I'm flattered and honored to be here.
Well, I really would love to just start with your origin story. How on earth did you manage to find yourself in real estate?
It's really very simple. I had been to dinner with someone, and we left a restaurant in the neighborhood where I live now, and there was a sign in front of the cutest little condominium, and I thought, oh, we should look at this. And so it was. I ended up calling basically an OT agent. And her name was Harriet Routman. And Harriet was about 5 foot tall with fiery red hair, and she had watermelons painted on her fingernails. And we looked at the property. I said, this looks like fun. I said, how can I do this? Now, mind you, I was an English major at the University of Alabama at the time. So that means I write really beautiful house descriptions and can, communicate succinctly in writing. And so that was the beginning. And I thought, I got the information. And I started taking classes, back when you had to go in person to take classes. So I started taking classes one night a week, and it just evolved from there. And my first instructor there was a woman named Jan Watts, and I ended up going to the office of one of the larger companies where she was affiliated, and later worked for her when she became a broker and became owner of a company.
Wow, just like that.
Just like that.
One house and you're in.
One house. I was in. I thought, this looks like fun. And, I thought, oh, I get to ride around a Cadillac and talk on the telephone all day, which is what my mother told people that I did.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. So.
Well, let's talk about the real story, though. You were young getting into the business, and you shared with me a little farming mishap that you may have started with.
I got into real estate when I was 22 years old. Now, let me tell you, if you have noticed, the average age of a realtor, I think, the demographic used to be like 56-year-old female. Mm-hmm. So people would look at me, what do you know about real estate? And more than you do, because I've just gotten a license and spent all this time learning about it. So it was a real challenge because there's no social media. Advertising was print, it was mailers, you had to be out pounding pavement. There were no leads to buy. There was nothing like that agents have available now. One of the biggest, I call it my biggest mishap and failure in marketing was, you did mailers. You either had a company print and do, which that was very expensive, or you mailed them yourself. And the neighborhood I knew the best was the neighborhood my dad had grown up in a place called Vestavia Hills, which is a suburb of Birmingham. My grandmother lived there. They'd been there since 1953. I knew all the little old ladies. I knew everybody. Well, you know what? They weren't going anywhere. They were stuck in those 50s ranchers until the hearse took them away. They weren't leaving. They weren't moving. They weren't anything. Their kids weren't doing anything. So it was just this horrible failure of farming and marketing that never worked out. And roughly, it took about 10 more years before that neighborhood started to really turn. I think I got one death listing in that neighborhood when one of the little old ladies died. One.
Oh, my goodness.
Out of all those years. And it was because my grandmother was in garden club with her. So that was probably my biggest mistake when I got into the business. But where my business was naturally gravitating was because of my own age, was first-time home buyers. Well, first-time home buyers were buying in a much lower price point. They were buying in more affordable neighborhoods. In Birmingham, Alabama, it was Crestwood. And Crestwood was the neighborhood of the gays and the grays. And Crestwood was built about the same time as Vestavia Hills. They're both 1950s neighborhoods, so ranchers, nice lots, well-built houses. But the turnover was a little quicker in Crestwood for some reason because there was a section that was older. It was affordable. You didn't have to pay for higher taxes for a school district. So a lot of my buyers wanted to be in the city of Birmingham, and it was proximity to the city. And so I ended up working more and more in that neighborhood and eventually moved into it. And
You said gays and grays. I don't want to jump over that.
okay.
For those who don't understand what you're saying.
Gays and grays. Gays and grays mean that you had the gay community moving in, and we all know that this is a real estate phenomenon, and you follow the gays and you'll follow the improvement of the property and the appreciation of the value of the property. There's no question. There's studies done on this. It is a fact. It's the real thing. The grays, this would be the greatest generation who had moved into the neighborhood when the houses were either brand new or shortly thereafter. And you probably had a 50-50 custom-built house versus tract house in the neighborhood. And so as younger people were moving in, we were all getting to know the people who are our grandparents' age. And I had this group of old people that I loved and adored. But I'd always loved and adored old people because I hung out with my grandparents, and my grandfather came from a very large family, so lots of great aunts and uncles. And I always had an affection for this demographic. So Crestwood and Forest Park, two different neighborhoods, but they abut one another. I live in Forest Park now. It is a historic neighborhood built in the 1920s. Of course, with most cities, you see the gap between the Depression, World War II, and then the boom after the war. And so you see the difference in the architecture, and you also kind of get the gap in ages in the neighborhood due to that phenomenon. And so these two neighborhoods I fell in love with, and I can mentally ride down every street in my head and tell you which house looks like what on the streets in these neighborhoods after almost 32 years of doing this.
So you've shared with me, you know, some people go wide and they try to serve every little community, and you have made a very conscious decision to go narrow. Talk to me about that.
You cannot be everything to everyone. It is impossible for you to have the kind of expertise and knowledge about neighborhoods if you are constantly running across 5 counties, which the metro area of Birmingham is 5 counties. I have a line that I generally stick close to. I will go out on request to neighborhoods and to help clients, but I tend to stay closer into the city because of the fact that I know it, I'm very comfortable in it, and I can find my way around without having to look on a map. The times that I have gone out and shown property or listed property in way out in the burbs because we just keep expanding, you know, like kudzu, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. I get to places, I'm like, where am I? And when you specialize, it's like going to the best cardiologist. The best cardiologist knows what's wrong with you when you walk through the door. He can look at you and tell you what you need. When I walk into a house, I can price a house in Crestwood and Forest Park without even seeing it. I can have a description over the telephone from one of my team members, and they can tell me where it is, tell me who owns the house, what's on either side of it, and I can almost peg the pricing on that property without going in it.
What impact does this have on the client?
Well, the client will determine that I have been told a few times that I'm an acquired taste. You know,
tell more.
I'm an acquired taste. Well, my cardiologist, who ended up being my cardiologist, and it was actually God's hand at that, I met he and his wife, and they called off of a luxury condominium I had listed. I met them. I showed them the property. And, you know, went through my qualification questions before I met them, and they didn't want that property. He called me back a few days later, and he said, I've checked you out. I said, you did? I said, tell me about that. He said, well, I found out I might not like your personality, but you're the most honest realtor in Birmingham. I said, I'll take that all day long. So, yes, I'm an acquired taste. I'm going to tell you the truth, whether you like it or not, and that puts a lot of people off. If you can't handle me telling you exactly what it's going to take to sell your house or exactly what you need to do, we're not a good match, because I'm not here to sugarcoat things. I'm not here just to make you feel good. I'm here to help you achieve your goal. I'm here to sell the house and help you make the proper decision on where you're going, whether you're going anywhere or not. And a lot of times agents come in and they're not honest and direct and to the point, and it wastes people's time and money. I don't like doing that.
You have very high standards.
I do. My professionalism is very high. My ethics are very strong. I have other agents who will talk about me and say, well, he's just so mean. And they're like, no, he's not mean. He's telling you that you need to do what the contract says and hold you to a professional standard and to make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to do in a timely manner. That's not necessarily being mean. That's how professional he is. When I started at 22 years old, I dressed like this. I drove a new Cadillac. I had to fight for every transaction I got because I was too young, because I was a baby. This face hadn't always looked like this. I had hair at one time. I had a cute little cherubic face, and people just didn't think I knew what I was doing. So it took time to overcome that. So I had to work really hard on my work ethic, which came naturally, and my professionalism, and the fact that I did what was best for the client, even to my own detriment.
So give me an example of that.
The best example I can give you of that goes back to one of my grays that I loved and adored, and her name was Margaret Warren, and she was my neighbor across the street in Crestwood at one point. And I would go visit, just to visit, because I enjoy that, to go visit people that I know and just sit and talk. Has nothing to do with real estate. And so I'd go see Margaret. And I went in one day and she said, my children are telling me to sell the house. And I looked at her, I said, well, Margaret, can you still go up and down the stairs? Yes. I said, can you still keep the house? Yes. You're still driving? Of course I am. I said, can you afford to live here? Absolutely. I said, then don't do a thing. I'll come put your house on the market anytime you want to. I said, but I don't think you need to move. I said, you're happy here. This is where you've been for 50 years. Don't leave until you absolutely have to, or until you're no longer with us. I eventually did list that house when she made the decision that she would go to assisted living. Mm-hmm. I still visited her at assisted living.
This is a big part of your model. I want you to talk about, we had a conversation about, you call them Patti LaBelle pies, which cracks me up.
No. It's not that. It's I'm not. My business model doesn't give away 10,000 Patti LaBelle sweet potato pies every Thanksgiving. My business model is very different. I'm not mailing out 40,000 pieces of mail. My business is nose to nose, toe to toe, belly to belly, and you know me. I know you. My relationships are personal. I care about my clients. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to bake. And this little group of my grays in Crestwood, about twice a year, I would bake pies and take to them and just go visit. And so there's about a dozen of them. So I did this. At this point, it's evolved into a pound cake because it's easier to make and I like making them. And so I will get up in the mornings at 6 o'clock and have a pound cake made in the oven and out and still warm and delivered before noon to someone that I know that I feel like needs to see me, or they need someone to come visit them. Mm-hmm. So it's out of love. It's not out of anything else. And it's out of what I appreciate doing and what I like. And one of my close friends who's also in the industry, he said to me, this is your ministry. Mm. You know, I'm not out proselytizing the world. I'm just out going to see people. I'm present. I'm there. And they know that.
I have to imagine they value that so greatly.
I probably value it more than they do because I get as much from it as they get.
That's beautiful. You mentioned team earlier, and if you would indulge us, I'd love to have this arc that you've been through over the years. You know, you started out as this young solo agent at 22, and at some point you made the decision to start growing a team.
Well, let's back up a little bit. At some point, I made the foolish decision of buying out the company I worked for. and realized this was not what I wanted to do. And about 4 years after I bought out the company, I said, oh, I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. It was driving me crazy. At that point, I had a Coldwell Banker franchise. I merged with another office and said, I'm going back to just being me. I can't do this anymore. This is too much. I'm not good at managing people in this kind of sense because I know how I work, and not everybody wants to work that way. At this, to follow the timeline, the biggest thing that kind of sent me in the direction of what I have now, which is more of a cooperative group than a traditional team. We're a group of, there's 5 of us, and we are associated with each other underneath my Jeffrey Klinner Group name. And I'm the real estate daddy, you know, because I'm the senior statesman in the office at this point. Now, mind you, I'm only 53, but it's because I've been around forever. And the way we're set up is not the traditional team, but we're all there on call for one another. So if I need help in going to get a listing, I always take Kevin with me, and Kevin's been to Star Power. He goes with me on every listing because he needs to see everything that I'm doing. He needs to know every property, and the client needs to know him. The other team members will sometimes go for the very same reason, because they're going to hold open houses. I'm not going to hold open houses. The client needs to know that they're getting not just one human, but they're getting the whole group, and they're getting everything that that group brings. Now, mind you, I'm not feeding them. I'm not feeding them. I don't get half of everything they do. That's not how we function. We function, like I said, in the cooperative manner that I described, because Kevin's out of town for a week, or Gina's out of town, or whoever's gone. There's always somebody to cover for them, and they don't have to go looking for someone to help them. You know, if they have a client that needs something, one of us is always there. There's always somebody around. So we've found that that works really well for us, as opposed to the very traditional team.
What about the compensation? I'm sure some of our viewers are saying, well, how are they?
Well, the compensation is that they are, I don't take half of their business. I don't take half of their proceeds. They still function under the situation with the company, and our company has a cap. And so they function under that. They do pay a certain amount to me, not a lot. It's a very limited amount. But, you know, in the situations where I hand over my client base, if I receive, you know, a referral on something, I'll say, okay, it'll be Kevin and me, or whoever, or I handed one over to Leah and said, okay, Leah, you're going to take care of this buyer because they want to be in an area that you know better than I do, and it'll make me crazy to go do this. I said, however, I don't want them going to anyone else because we need to take care of them. So you're going to take care of them, but this is going to be a 50-50 split. My people are all happy about that. It's business they wouldn't have had. It takes pressure off of me. We take care of the client. The client gets their needs met. They know I'm available to answer questions. Leah is going to be the one that's out there walking into the property with them and on the ground. So I'm kind of the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, so to speak, in a lot of these transactions and situations.
Now, what if I'm covering for you when you're out of town? Is that just you do it for me, so I do it for you?
Basically, yes.
Amazing.
But normally everything's under control. You know, it's rare that anything pops up that is, you know, catastrophic. I was in Palm Springs, and all of a sudden I had several people saying, we need to do X, Y, Z. I said, well, okay. And I thought Kevin can handle it. And I ended up flying from Palm Springs back to Birmingham 2 days after all of this started up. And I got everybody under contract, got it all done, and turned around and went back to Palm Springs.
You have been through a couple of life events.
Yes.
That have shifted your perspective on the business. Are you willing to share?
Sure.
Okay.
When I was younger, in my 30s, there was someone in my life that we were involved, and they would come to town, and I was really at the peak of my business at this point. I had several listings. Phones were ringing constantly. I didn't have a team. Someone had called off of a sign. I said, I've got to go show a house. When I came back from showing the house, they said, you know, it's a lot of trouble for me to come here. It's easier for you to come there. And if you're going to go show houses and walk off and leave me, I'm not going to come here. And that was a big aha moment because, you know, we've all been taught as realtors, we're always on call. You always go show. You just all of these things that we've been indoctrinated to. And at that point, I said, I will never do this again. And that was the first step in changing how I did business. And I developed a series of questions that I ask every caller, every person that emails, before I agree to even meet them.
Would you be willing to role play that?
I'm happy to talk about that. So I do this before ever putting the key into the ignition of the Cadillac or pushing the button, is that we've got to have some questions answered. The first question is, are you working with or have you signed anything with a realtor? If the answer is yes, that's great. Who is that agent? Well, it's, you know, whoever. Oh, I know them. Let me give them a call. They'll be glad to come talk. They'll be glad to show you the property. I said, I don't want to overstep my bounds. I appreciate you calling on the listing. My seller will be glad to know that someone wants to come see it. But it's not going to be me. I'm not going to be doing that showing, because if they already have an established relationship, I'm not going to take it. I certainly don't want to muddle it, and I don't want that reputation. So we're done. Are you working with a realtor? No. Great. Will you be paying cash or obtaining financing? Well, we will be obtaining financing. Fantastic. Have you gotten approved for a mortgage yet? Yes. Well, excellent. Who is your mortgage lender? Well, it's so-and-so. I said, do you think you could get them on the phone today? Possibly. Well, my seller does not want me to show the house without knowing that the prospects can actually afford to make the purchase. Would you mind doing that? If the answer is no, they've not done that, I follow the same and I put it off on the seller that you need to be qualified to make the purchase. So I can put you in touch with 3 different lenders. Here are 3 that you can choose from. I'll be glad to set those calls up for you, and you can follow that step. And then once you've done that, we can see the house. And if they're paying cash, I pull back a little bit, because people who actually are paying cash know they're paying cash. And so there's not a whole lot more question to it, because if they're really paying cash, they've got the money, they've got the financial people, they can provide the proof at the time they make the offer. So we go ahead and go. Okay. And so I go through all of those steps. Number 1, to save time for my sellers. Number 2, to save time for me, because as time has progressed, I'm not as sweet as I used to be, and I get frustrated really easily. So.
All right. You had a health incident that changed your perspective.
I had 2 health incidents that changed my perspective. The first one was I was born with a genetic heart defect. I had a bicuspid aortic valve that had a murmur rather than it being a tricuspid valve. And I was told at 20, oh, you'll have to have this replaced in your late 40s. Well, late 40s got here, and I had to have open heart aortic valve replacement. And I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I could tell. I would go out I wouldn't make appointments before 10 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't make them after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I had a professor and his wife come in to the university, and I showed property to them. And I walked through the door that afternoon and hit the sofa for 2 hours because I was so exhausted. Now, prior to this, that wouldn't have been an issue. This is the late 40s. I shouldn't be having this. I'm worked out. I'm in relatively good shape. That valve had stopped working. So open heart aortic valve replacement began changing my life. I'm like, okay, real estate is not the most important thing in my world. You know, do I want to die showing a house in the middle of Birmingham, Alabama, or do I want to write a different chapter in my life? And so I had already considered, you know, what that chapter was going to be. and chapters evolve. And after I recovered from the heart surgery, I bought a place in Palm Springs, California. And so I've begun to divide my time throughout the year. It's not a full half there, full half one other place. So I go for, a month, 2 months at a time, and that's where my team helps cover when I'm away. And clients don't want you to open doors. They want your knowledge. I know where the bodies are buried. I know which houses are going to slide down the mountain, or which ones slid down the mountain and got pulled back up. But that was a pivotal moment in my career of realizing, okay, I don't need to be sales associate of the year again. I don't need to kill myself on this. I can't be everything to everyone. I cannot do what I did before. The second one was right at 4 years ago. I was in University of Alabama at Birmingham Hospital dying of COVID.
Oh my gosh.
I got COVID at the very end of October 2020 and went to the hospital, and they said, your oxygen is so low. If it doesn't come up with this high flow oxygen, we're going to intubate you. I said, no, you won't. You'll send me home. I'll die there. That's it. I said, we're not playing this game. I sat in that hospital bed for 10 days with high pressure oxygen and cried every day because you didn't know if you were going to leave. You didn't know if you were going home or you were checking out. Mm-hmm. You didn't know how you were leaving. Luckily, my cardiologist is one of the finest there is, my general practitioner, and my ENT who diagnosed me. They were all on top of everything. I was very fortunate to be connected through, real estate saved me in this sense because of the connections I had, because the cardiologist I sold a property to, because he took care of me. The ENT had taken care of my father. I sold property for him. It was this whole magical. It all fell together because not everybody has that blessing and luxury to know their people so well that they're going to really focus on them. And so, yes.
So glad you made it through.
Thank you. And that took, that was about three months out of my life, completely out of my life, because I was on oxygen for 3 months. It was a really nasty experience. And again, had it not been for Kevin Dobbs on my team taking care of things and continuing to close transactions, everything would have fallen through the cracks.
But it didn't, because you have good systems and processes in place.
Something like that. Not as good as other people, but they work for us.
You had a moment you shared with me earlier about when you decided it was the last sign call you were ever going to take. I don't know if you remember that conversation.
That's the conversation that I just had for you about the sign call when the person said, you go off and show property.
Gotcha.
That was the last sign call. And all of my sign calls get sent over to my team. Now, I don't return the calls off the signs. So I just rotate them through. If there's a voicemail, I'll forward it over to Kevin or Gina or Josh or Leah, and it gets sent to them.
Super.
And they go from there. I prefer to be a listing agent at this point in my career. Showing 25 houses in a day is impossible after the health issues I've had. But luckily, specializing in a neighborhood and a certain group of people, I tend to have the ability just to go to 1 or 2 houses in the event that someone says, hey, we would like to see your listing on Rockford Road. Okay, well, it's around the corner. I can meet you there in 30 minutes. Come on. Whereas if it's somebody that wants to see from one end of the county to the other, I am not the person for you. And I did get a referral call asking if I could work with an investor. And I basically said to the agent referring to me, I said, let me explain something to you up front. I said, unless your investor is savvy and knows what they're doing, I said, I'm not going all over creation. I said, I'm not going to have them tell me how it's going to be done. I said, I'm old, I'm a steamroller, and this is how it goes. I said, so you go back to your client and ask them if they want a steamroller agent that's been around over 3 decades, or do they want somebody that's going to be soft and cuddly? I said, because I'm not soft and cuddly. She didn't call me back.
There you go.
So I kept my peace. My life is about peace at this point. My life is about my enjoyment because I don't know how much time is left on the clock. When I was in my 20s, I worked 10, 12 hours a day, at least 5 days a week. I wouldn't dare do that now because of the things that I've been through, because I've realized my health is more important, my time is more important, and where I spend my time is more important than
Such
a
valuable
house.
life lessons to get. And you're not old.
Okay.
You hardly qualify as old. You're
I don't
younger
know.
Than, you're
I don't-
younger than me, and I'm not old. So
I am almost to that, what is it they call the 55 and up neighborhoods where you have to be 55 to move into. I'm closing in on that. I'm
and
closing in on that.
you get a separate menu at Perkins.
I can get the AARP coffee anywhere I go now.
So let's shift gears to how you stay in contact with your clients. We talked about the pound cakes, but you have a different approach to your client appreciation.
So I work on roughly a top 100 people.
Okay.
Top 100 people that I know and love and have done business with. They're going to see me in their mailbox regularly. They're going to get the Reminder Media magazine. I love and adore. You know, it's automated. It looks good. It's shiny. People like it. There's also a supplemental postcard that goes with that. So I'm seeing these 100 once a month now. In the past, I would send out thousands of cards, and the shotgun effect was not as valuable as the marksman approach. And so from a contact standpoint, from a traditional farming, that's that layer. The other thing is I give a Christmas party every year and have for 32 years, except for 2, when COVID and heart were the issue. But I give this party in my home. And so between 100 and 200 people will come to my home this Saturday night, and they will have open bar and food and laugh and carry on. And I have friends that have been to every one of these parties that reminisce about every last one of them.
Incredible.
So that's what I do. I stay in front of people personally.
Why did you decide to host this in your home?
Because you either have the gift of hospitality or you don't. And my family has the gift of hospitality. My family hosted a barbecue on the 4th of July for 70 years at the farm.
Wow.
With hundreds of people coming. So this was something that was already innate to me to host in my home. And I've had much larger houses, and I would buy houses for parties. Oh, look, I could give a really big party in this house. I put 6 Christmas trees. At this point, it's one tiny Christmas tree. The bar is on the patio. The valet service takes everybody's car. So it's toned down to make my life easier, but it maintains the hospitality in my home. And most people don't entertain at home anymore. Most people don't give dinner parties. Very few people actually have people into their home. Mm-hmm. And it's a point of love and vulnerability and opening up your life to have people prowling through your house. So, you know, people appreciate that. And I like doing it.
And you have evolved the logistics, if you will, of that over the years.
Yes.
Talk about what it was like when you first started throwing the party.
Oh, when I first started giving this party, it truly, I think I maxed out at about 200 people one year. And this party would start at 8 p.m. and go to midnight. And a lot of times it would go on beyond midnight. You know, when bartender had already gone, people were still in my house, and I'd have to say, "Get out! I want to go to bed." But I would cook everything. I made everything.
Oh my gosh.
Almost everything.
Jeffrey.
Yes, and so I have one signature item that I make, and they're known by a couple of different names, but they're haystacks, and they're made with butterscotch and chow mein noodles and cocktail peanuts. Well, I have just made 6 batches of those before, this party, and that's ready. That's waiting. At this other point in Birmingham, there's this wonderful little place called Auschler Sandwiches, where they make the little Bridge Club sandwiches that are cut into little sections, little squares.
Oh,
and
very cute.
Yeah, very cute. So I ordered 9 dozen of those. Now, if you don't know what 9 dozen sandwiches looks like, it's about 4 big piles on a dining room table, and then you're piled with these haystacks and the bars outside. That makes everything easier for me.
Perfect.
That makes everything easier. Before, I would grill and slow roast beef tenderloin and all kinds of things. I made everything. And it just finally got to the point, I'm too old for this. I'm too tired for this.
Well, you can't socialize if you
And I've done all that, and so by the time everybody would get there, I was this skeleton in the corner ready to fall over. And this has made my life better. So realizing that as time goes on,
leverage,
and that people don't expect what you think they expect of you in certain aspects, particularly in giving parties.
Well, that's a wonderful wake up.
Very much so.
You still going 8 to midnight?
No, it's 7 to 10 now. Everybody's old. Nobody wants to stay out past 10, and they're all like, if I have to come at 8 o'clock, I'm in bed by then. Okay, so 7 to 10 now. And it's clients, it's friends, it's select people from the industry. I don't invite. It's not a blanket invitation. But the people who come, I really do care about, and they enjoy coming to this event. So I get to spend a little time with every person that comes through the door.
That's
and
wonderful.
Strangely enough, the conversations will be after the first of the year, we need to talk about. We are considering, okay, and I'm not high pressure. I'm a steamroller, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and I'm going to take good care of you, but I'm not going to chase you and hound you to do business. So I'm there when you need me.
Well, it's clear that they know that and trust that about
They do.
you.
They do. I had a conversation with a very young client 2 days ago, and he said, I absolutely would not do business without you. I trust what you do and the fact that I know you are taking care of me. And this young man had worked for me as an intern briefly, and I had sold his parents their first house, sold him his first house, and he and his wife and his brother and his fiance. So it's this really sweet, long-standing family relationship.
That's the ripple effect we're after.
It is.
Talk to me about your mentors in this business.
My mentors. In 1993, I started off at a company called Johnson, Rast, and Hayes, and Marilyn Sire was the top producer. I was luckily smart enough to know that I needed to watch and listen to her and do everything that she did or told me to do. She handed me a Star Power cassette tape in 1993. You remember cassettes, clunk into the dashboard. And it was Sam Miller. And she said, you need to listen to Sam. He's a little bit older than you, but you can get a lot out of this. And Marilyn is still my mentor today. And she said to me that she continued to mentor me because I was the only realtor in her entire career that ever did what she said do and didn't ask questions. I just did it. And so Marilyn Sire has been a mentor. She's been my #1 mentor. Jan and Bill Watts, Watts Realty Company in Birmingham. Jan was my instructor at one point. She was my broker. Roy Clater, who was a Star Power star, who is no longer with us. Sandra Nickel. Sandra, I love and adore. I have taken my team to lunch in Montgomery to see Sandra and see her operation, and just so they know her and she knows them. I absolutely cannot sing the praises any higher of Star Power because of these people that I have met over the years. And, I knew Arlene Stewart, and of course, these are all in my state. And they were people I could pick up the phone and call and say, what do you think? And Roy Clater was such a dear because he would call me and say, I'm sending someone your way. You need to do this, 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 and this. And I did exactly what I was told to do. Handled it exactly the way he said handle it.
How important is it for an agent in business today to find a mentor?
I think it is very important to find a mentor. I don't know how I would exist in this business truly had it not been for Marilyn Sire. I don't know. She is one of the reasons that I am the success that I am. She told me I needed to get my CRS, my GRI. She's the one who said, we're taking a trip and we're going to go get the SRES. And so we have done those things over the years, and the relationships, the friendships that I formed with people like Roy and Sandra, that I consider them to be family, and that I know that if I need something and I need guidance that I need an extra perspective on, they're going to be able to give it to me. And a new agent now who doesn't have that, business is much more complicated now. It's far more complicated, but unfortunately, I think so many new agents think, oh, it's just the Instagrammable moment. If my Instagram does this or that, or my social media. No, you still need the advice and counsel of someone who's been around longer than you have, that knows more than you do. I still need that counsel every day. I know that I know a lot and have a lot of experience, but I don't know everything. So I know that having those people that I can trust, that I can call and say, I need some help with this. What do you think about X? And then getting that perspective is very important.
I can just speak to when I was in real estate prior to going to work for Star Power, meeting a few of the stars, the Whitmores and the Brazens, and Kathy, my boss, Kathy Russell, being interviewed. It's one of the things that I fell in love with Star Power over, was this ability to walk right up to someone who was already doing it, and didn't matter that I was this little 24-year-old squirt. They were just like, tell me what you're looking at, what you're thinking about. Let me help you.
Well, that segues into our first conversation about this, because when you asked me to do this, I said, I'm not giving out 10,000 Patti LaBelle pies at Thanksgiving. I'm not sending out 10,000 pieces of mail. I'm not doing 100 transactions a year. And you said to me, not everybody is, and people need to hear that as well. And so you're right. You're right about that the agent who's doing 24 transactions a year needs mentoring. The agent who's doing 100 transactions a year with a team, they need someone they can talk to.
Absolutely.
This industry is not easy. It is exhausting. But if you are intelligent enough to know that you need help regardless, that you always need a resource. And as I've also said to you, that Star Power is the only thing I attend anymore. I used to go to NAR. I went to all the franchise things, went to state. I stopped. I don't do those. I don't need to be sold on a franchise. I don't need to be sold on NAR. I come to Star Power because of the fact that it is not brand specific, and it is people who are actually doing the items and are sharing what they've done, their successes and their failures. Don't do this. This is what we found that worked. Don't do this. And that has to be modified for each person's marketplace. My marketplace is different than say, let's just take, for example, the other market I know is Palm Springs. They're two very different markets. In Birmingham, Alabama, everybody knows 15 realtors. In Palm Springs, California, they don't. So open houses work really well out there. Doesn't work in Birmingham anymore. That's over. That's gone. That rarely works. And that's only going to work in certain neighborhoods that are much more walkable. So if you're a drivable neighborhood, they may not work as well.
You now being in the role as a mentor, if I were a brand new agent coming to you in today's landscape in this real estate market, what are some of the key pieces of advice that you would give me?
I would tell you to get up, get dressed, go to the office. Do not sit at home in your pajamas working, because that's one of the worst things that you can do. You need to get out. You need to be present. You need to see people. You need to see property. That's your job as a brand new agent if you don't have any business to speak of at that point. You need to be having coffee with people. You need to be having lunch with people, conversations. Ask questions. Don't call people up and just start talking about real estate. Ask how they are. You'll get there. They'll want to know what you're doing. But you need to get up and be present. As we've heard, get up, get dressed, and show up. And that's really, really important. And so many people don't grasp that. That is the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I would say is absolutely find a mentor. Find someone that understands you, that's willing to be your mentor. Not everybody's willing to be a mentor. Not everybody's cut out for it. And there are people that I absolutely would run from, that I would not want to be my mentor. But there are people that are willing to give back, and giving back to the industry and to your community is the signal that you realize this person is not all about themselves. They're willing to share. And I've talked to people also, like my first broker was Jerry Gray, and she would say, if you'd get one thing out of just, going to a conference, you've achieved a lot. And I've been in classes that she's taught, and she said, 99% of these people will not apply what I've said here. And that's a reality. The majority of people don't apply what they're hearing from people. So if you go to something and take away one thing and you implement a portion of it, you've done more than 99% of the realtors in the world these days, or humans.
Isn't that astonishing?
It is astonishing. But not everyone's smart enough to know that. I know that every time I go to a Star Power conference, I'm going to get one thing for sure, always. I've never left without getting one thing that I thought, aha, I need to do this, or I can make this change to make my life better. At this point, my life is about making it better, making my life more enjoyable and better. It's not about selling more houses. It's not about taking more listings. It's not about growing my team. It's about making my life better. And if making my life better is selling less houses and making less money, there's no problem with that.
You know what's interesting about that, Jeffrey? What I've noticed is by you getting that clarity, you're still naturally attracting the business. You're putting less out.
Correct.
But it's still coming in because your focus is so much on the relationship.
My focus is on the relationship. It has always been there, but it's much more on that now than ever before, because as I've gotten older, my perspectives have changed, and each generation's perspectives are different. And so a lot of my friends that are in their early 50s are like, kind of like the old Peggy Lee song, is that all there is? And they're dealing with parents who are aging and decisions have to be made. And so there's a lot more commiseration going on now than ever before. And our friends are dying. In my case, because I have such a wide range of friends that are, from 20s to 90s, my friends are dying. And I've had some very, very close friends over the past few years die, and it's like I knew those relationships and the time that I spent, I knew the time was finite. I knew the time that I spent with those people was not time wasted. I never felt like I took time away from my business to go and visit with someone and just be present. I never felt like I was wasting time. And anytime business cycles, and it does, it ebbs and flows all year long. I know that I'm not going to be homeless. I'm not going to be hungry. God said he'll never leave you nor forsake you. And so the fact is that when I feel like, okay, there's no business, well, guess what? I find that I need to go All of a sudden, oh, I need to see this person. I need to see this person. I need to see this person. So my time's never wasted. It's just focused in a different way.
That has to be so fulfilling.
I get more from them than they get from me. I get energized. I can be really depressed, and I can go bake a couple of cakes and go deliver and go visit and laugh and have a good time, and I feel much better.
So yours is get up, dress up, show up, and bake.
Yes, absolutely. Bake, go to lunch, go to coffee,
Yeah.
or make a phone call.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be one of empathy, compassion, kindness, honesty, and professionalism. That's what I want. When I'm gone out of here, be that from the industry or from this earth, and somebody looks back, I want them to say, yeah, he was a steamroller and he could be tough, but he was kind and he was honest. That's what I want my legacy to be. That's what I think about, is kindness and compassion to other people. We live in a world now of so much angst and vitriol that it takes a lot every day to overcome that. And the least little bit of kindness that we can spread is like, putting a drop of water on a parched flower in a field someplace. So that's as important to me as anything right now. And that doesn't mean that I'm always sweet and nice. We all have our moments. We all have our moments.
There are two things I want to capture. You shared a story about being stuck in an elevator.
Okay, so you want me to tell the elevator story? I don't know if I never sent you the video that I made about it. So I had the absolute pleasure of being very close friends with a woman in Birmingham, Alabama named Patty McDonald. She was my best friend, and she was several years older. And I was her escort after her husband died. She sat on the board of Virginia Sanford Theater. She was on board of governors. I was on board of directors. And we were at a joint meeting one day. And we're on the second floor of the building. And she doesn't do steps. So we get in the elevator with this other gentleman. The elevator door closes. There's this click. And the elevator is stuck. Here I am in the elevator. Elevator's not moving. He looks like he's frightened to death and anemic looking. His health didn't look good. I've got Patty McDonald on my left arm here, who she is, walks with a cane, can't stand very long, bad knees. And so we start ringing the bell, and the people at the theater are talking to us through the door. They say, oh, we've called Bagby Elevator. I said, hell, don't call Bagby Elevator. Call the fire department. I got these two people in this elevator that have got to get out of here. So finally, here's the sirens are coming. Patty's worried about the elevator falling. I said, the elevator's not going to fall. How do you know it's not going to fall? It's a hydraulic elevator. How do you know? It pushes. It doesn't pull. We're okay. Just relax. So she's leaned up against the wall. I'm having to take her shoes off because the shoes are too tight. It's this whole Carol Burnett skit. It's got to be. And so finally, all of a sudden, because the elevator, it's kind of jumping in place. It's not moving. It's not doing. They send this giant pry bar through the opening of the door. They pry it back. Springs pop. Parts go everywhere. Big hunky firemen are opening the door. Well, here's Patty starting to flirt with the fireman. Oh, well, aren't you just the most handsome thing? Oh, I'm so glad. I said, would you shut up and get off the elevator? You can flirt with the fireman later. We get her out. There's no way to get her downstairs. They have to put her in a wheelchair, tip the wheelchair back. Of course, the woman who is glamorous as can be, perfect hair, makeup, jewels, she's flirting with the fireman the entire time as they take her out to my car.
Oh, my goodness.
So this made for a really good video on Facebook that has caused much of a stir and many, many howls. Of course, I had to do a follow-up and say, yes, Patty's fine. Yes, she flirted with a fireman. She flirts with every man all the time that comes along. So,
But what I love about that, and the reason I had you tell the story, is because we've talked about social media and marketing, and your video, you've made a conscious decision to just share real
Yes.
life you.
yes.
And what is the response you get?
At this point, I haven't done any lately, and people keep saying, oh, you need to do more videos. And I said, I have to be inspired. I said, this is not just something that just pops up. I said, I have to be inspired. And given the fact that the videos, I did these during just probably during COVID and after, because this elevator event, I think, happened probably in 2021, I think is about the time it happened. But I would do, you know, if you watched Leslie Jordan do his little snips that he did, I did things like that because I was at home baking. I was bored. You know, you couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't do anything. And I had different videos of me lifting the top off of a cake and looking and saying, I'm going to be big as a house before this is over. You know, that kind of thing. And so, I got lots of reaction from that, and I had several people say to me, you made us laugh. You know, it was a really crappy time. You made us laugh. We wish you'd do more. And I'm like, I have to be inspired. I need a muse for this. This is not something that is scripted. These were all off the cuff just when I thought about it. And so, but from a social media standpoint, they were not geared towards real estate at all. They were not, there were one or two videos that we did do of houses that I had on the market, and they, you know, people commented on it because I'm a little bit animated.
No.
Just a little bit. And they appreciated the way I would talk about the houses, but what they loved was just talking about the day in, day out of the situation. I think I made one that said, you know, that I was headed to pick up dinner from a specific restaurant because I was sick of my own cooking. You know, just that kind of thing. And everyone related to it. It was a very relatable time. And so I think the relatability gave people a different perspective on who I was.
Yes.
And not that it necessarily made people call and say, oh, come sell my house. It didn't do that. But that wasn't the point.
No.
It was just, we were all in the same boat, and I was just vocalizing what I was feeling.
And that made you human to people.
It did make me human to people.
What a blessing. I have one last request.
One last request.
You shared with me an expired note that you write that I think
yes.
every single person watching could do this.
So one of the things that one of the most valuable things I ever learned from Star Power were the scripts. I had the binders. Remember the little rings with the colored cards that you flipped through? The scripts. My favorite script is if you sleep on it, someone else may sleep in it. That's my favorite one. That's my favorite one-liner. But I remember I traveled with Roy Clater to some place in Mississippi for him to speak to some realtor group for lunch one day. And I've still got those notes somewhere. But what I learned from him was the way that you talk to people. And I had a note, and I picked up a listing because I actually went into my office on New Year's Day. This is when I didn't keep a computer at home. I had home and office separate. I was going to my grandmother's house for New Year's Day lunch, stopped by the office, saw a listing in my neighborhood that had expired, pulled out my stationery, note card, monogram, that was it. And the card said, I noticed that your home recently left the active real estate market and did not sell. It would be an honor and privilege to bring my knowledge of the real estate market to you in a visit. Please call me so we may set that up and get your home sold. And that was it. I got the listing. That note, whatever variation that you can use on that, whatever will work better for how you communicate, but that handwritten note on a nice piece of stationery that was, you know, I filled it out, hand wrote the address, hand wrote my return address because they saw that my return address was in the neighborhood. So I didn't put my name on it. I just put my address on the back of it. I took that card and dropped it in the mailbox on New Year's Day. It didn't pick up until the 2nd. It arrived on the 3rd. On the 4th, I got the call. On the 5th, I had the listing appointment and got the property listed. You never know. But that was that came from Star Power, the way to use the verbiage.
Well, I'm celebrating that, and I'm also celebrating this is who Jeffrey is.
This is it.
See the opportunity, act on the opportunity. Don't put it off. Make it happen now.
Yes.
Jeffrey, I just want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Once again, so much wisdom shared, and thank you for your vulnerability and sharing what went on with your health. I think it's a huge lesson for everybody watching to really prioritize what's important in their life.
Well, thank you for having me. As I told you before, I am deeply flattered and humbled. It's been my pleasure.
Well, I'm sure all of you got a lot out of this interview, so do us a favor. Tell your colleagues they need to get on Star Power Club so that they can listen to these pearls of wisdom and change your business. I'm Amy Stair, CEO, and we look forward to seeing you on the next interview.